And so today here we are with another session of our repertory tutorial, going through our first concepts and definitions. And today we're going to talk just a little bit about words and about language. This session we're talking about chest and cough and all the words that come along with that. And I'd encourage you to have the repertory in the hand. I am so glad to be reunited with my repertory. The last couple of months, it was in one city and I was in another while I was traveling. And, you know, it's one thing to look at it online or to look at it in your repertory software, but there's just no substitute for having a book in your hand. And honestly, I don't have a book in my hand very often when I'm actually doing casework, but I have a book in my hand often when I'm doing research. So when I'm talking with somebody, it's not like I pull out my repertory and there I am going through it. But when I'm problem solving, I really like to be looking in there with book in the hand. So I certainly recommend that you guys do that. So you should have that handy with you for today. Okay. So we have lots of words that we use in our materia medica and actually remedies that show up in a variety of written places in literature from the same time era as when those remedies were being proven, when they were being developed. We have a lot of things from the 1860s to the 1930s that reference remedies that we're using. And here's an example. Did any of you read Anne of Green Gables? Did you ever read that, Kristen? Common book. Yep. Oh, I see your notes about fire ants and ticks. Yes, appalling. The insect world is just trippy. Yes. Okay, so Anne of Green Gables, very sweet. It was, my kids all read this book as part of their homeschool stuff. And, you know, it's part of the standard literature that a lot of kids read growing up. So in this, there's Anne, who is, you know, the sort of positive, beleaguered heroine of the book. And she says, "Don't cry, die," said Anne cheerily. "I know exactly what to do for croup. You forget that Mrs. Hammond had twins 3 times." Now, we don't know who Mrs. Hammond is right now, but I can't imagine having twins 3 times. When you look after 3 pairs of twins, you naturally get a lot of experience. They all had croup regularly. Just wait till I get the ipecac bottle. You mayn't have any at your house. Come on now. All right, so it was widely known back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that ipecac was a remedy for croup. Now, we all have, I mean, how many do you have ipecac in your, not as a remedy, but in the natural substance in your medicine cabinet as something to induce vomiting if it's needed for a poisoning kind of situation? Oh, I think you can. Ipecac syrup. Oh, or maybe I just have it back from back when the last time it was available for sale. Yeah, I just have a little bit of it, little bottles. So we have a lot of examples from our literature where we see people talking about things like digitalis and ipecacuanha and Cocos cacti, and, you know, referencing these things in literature where they were using them maybe in an herbal form, but we know now from the provings that they were acting in a homeopathic way. So we see in this example ipecac, and I just want you to be aware that there are lots of these things that we use that are, even though they are not being used in potentized form, they still act in a homeopathic way. And that's very well represented in relation to our cough. Okay, so if we just wander here through, we're almost done with our structure of the repertory. We started out with the mind and the vertigo, and we went through the different things in the head and the eye, stomach, abdomen, rectum. We did the GI tract, urinary organs, the genitalia. And now we're talking about all these things that have to do with cough: larynx and trachea, respiration, cough, expectoration, and chest. And the first thing that I want to say about all these things is that a particular section does not own a symptom. If we are looking specifically at the word for cough, and we do a search to say, with our friend Ipecac, the remedy Ipecacuanha, where do the words cough show up in the repertory? And we pull this up here. I just want you to walk through with me how many different sections there are. Mind weeping during coughing. And then these different things during, in the head section. Head pain on coughing. Perspiration on the scalp on coughing, which sounds like that's what we're going to find on the little children who are calcareous and silicas, right? That's where we're going to see what's going on with them. Okay, and eyes, lacrimation with a cough, nose, epistaxis with a cough. Now, this is interesting because Ipecac, even though we think of it as a remedy about gag, barf, cough, has huge applications in reproductive care. And this is one of the remedies for all kinds of late stage pregnancy issues. I use this for gals who have toxemia in late pregnancy, who have a placenta that doesn't deliver, who have morning sickness from hell that goes on all through the entire pregnancy. These are remedies that are priceless in reproductive care, when they're things that, you know, if we are not reading the entire materia medica about it, we're just going to see it as, oh yeah, that's a remedy that we deal with for a cough. So keep in mind, even though, you know, we can say, oh yeah, Ipecac, that's for gagging and vomiting, it has lots and lots of different things that are part of that remedy picture. Okay, and in particular, Ipecac also has lots of bleeding. So it's a remedy for uterine hemorrhage, for hemorrhage from the nose. It's a remedy that you're going to see in that area that the Chinese medicine folks talk about spleen weakness, about depletion of the spleen, where the spleen, which holds on to the blood, is not doing its job. So we see lots of stuff going on there. Okay, so more of these symptoms that we would think of as croupy, epistaxis cough with whooping cough, bluish discoloration with whooping cough, red discoloration with whooping cough. These are people who can't get the oxygen back in their face, stiffness, mouth bleeding during whooping cough, nausea during a cough, and then retching with coughing, which you'll notice is actually a fairly big rubric. Vomiting and retching, 70, 75 remedies. That's, you know, there are a lot of remedies that have that, even though we tend to think of heavy hitters like Ipecacuanha and Hepersulf, things where people cough, gag, retch, barf. No, there's a lot of remedies in there. Vomiting on coughing. Now, this is interesting to me, where you look at retching, vomiting, vomiting food from coughing, vomiting mucus from coughing. You know, Kent had a good differentiation in this, where he was looking at exactly what's coming back up. And then we go over here into abdomen. And pain, and these are people where their abdominal muscles are so sore because they've been coughing so much so long. So they get pain all across the abdomen. And then we go into larynx. These are people who make those funny wheezy noises with coughing. That's where you're hearing here. Laryngismus stridulus. This is one of the terms for that kind of noise that people make before they're going to cough, where you're in laryngeal spasm. Arrested respiration during coughing, people who can't get their breath. Paroxysmal coughs, long coughs. Chest pain, sleepiness with the cough. And we go right into perspiration and generalities. So I just want you to look. You know, one of the things that we've been talking about in the Tuesday, the twice a month repertory working group case sessions is that you can be quite flexible about where you look for an item. And out of all the things about a cough for Ipecac, we have one entry in the cough section. And yet look at all these symptoms. So when somebody has a difficult cough, I just want you to look and see each. We tend to think of modalities as something you would find in the cough section, like cough with epistaxis, cough with difficulty breathing, cough with abdominal pain, cough with vomiting. And actually, it's not necessarily represented that way. So one of the skills that we can develop as we're working with the repertory is this capacity to flip it the other way around. And instead of saying, oh, I need to look in the cough section for this, I can actually look in the stomach section, in the larynx section, in the trachea section, in the generalities section. I can look at where that other aspect, the modality, the modifier, the condition is happening and find cough in there. Okay? So cough in particular is scattered all over the repertory, and we need to be much better about being flexible about the way that we look for it. Okay? Welcome, Marjorie. Nice to see you here. All right. So now let's go back up here. You guys got your handy dandy repertory here with you? So I want you to open up to the larynx and trachea section of the repertory. And here in the larynx and trachea, you know, we were going through the GI tract. And now Kent has sort of been working his way from the head down the body. And we get to the end of the GI tract, and then he comes back up and goes through the respiratory tract. So everything in this grouping we're doing today is about breathing. So when you open up the section for larynx and trachea, which isn't very big, it's easy to just blow right by it. This section covers the inner structures of the throat, things about coughing that is felt in the throat, the voice, and anything that's happening in the throat with regard to noise that is created through the structures of the larynx and the trachea. So you're going to find things about vocal cords in here, the kind of whistling that goes on with people's breathing. You're going to find sore throats that happen located in the larynx, and everything to do with the loss of voice. Now, for a lot of symptoms in here, there are separate divisions for larynx, trachea, and throat pit. So if we take a look in here, like as an example, right now I'm seeing plenty of people who are having problems with hay fever. And one of the things that sometimes people with hay fever will describe is this crawling, itching, irritating sensation up in the nose and the sinuses. Some people actually get it in the throat. So if you were looking for that, you might open up in larynx and trachea. If somebody says, right here, I've got this crawling, itching feeling. So you're going to look for, under the larynx and trachea section, crawling in the larynx, crawling feeling in the trachea. And a lot of these sections are broken out into different places. So as we're wandering ourselves through here in alphabetical order, we can see croup, like Anne of Green Gables was talking to us about. Dryness in the larynx, foreign substance, sensation of irritation in the larynx, inflammation in the larynx. And here's where you're going to basically be finding people who have laryngitis. That old losing the voice, losing the capacity to speak. You're going to find it under larynx inflammation. And then the other thing that we find here is people who are trying to clear their throat and they've always got that wad of phlegm that they just can't quite clear. It's not in the posterior nares where it's easy to cough or hawk or spit it out. This is where you get the stuff that is deep in there. So under larynx and trachea, you can see mucus in the air passages. And then there's a couple of different areas of that in the larynx, in the trachea, and ejected with difficulty. If you see in there larynx and trachea, mucus, and then the subrubric, ejected with difficulty. This is where these are those people who get gunk in there that they just cannot possibly clear. We see this sometimes in little ones that have croup. We see it in elders where they say, I've got this stuff, but I'm not able to cough it out. It won't disappear. And then we go into burning pain, all different kinds of pain, all of the different kinds of irritation. The one that I hear the most from my clients is rawness, especially this summer. Almost everybody that's had a sore throat has described it as raw. I'm not quite sure why that is, but you know, it's funny. Symptoms tend to go in rhythms where there'll be a whole bunch of them described at once. Okay. And then the other thing that people will describe in here that's really important to know where to find it, and it's harder to find in the throat section, is when people have tickling in the pit of the throat, tickling in the larynx. So if you open to larynx and trachea and find the rubric tickling in the air passages. And this is one where, you know, when people say, oh, I have a cough that's triggered by this tickle in my throat. And if you follow tickling along, then you get to throat pit. Okay? And then, you know, we see all the remedies in there that are big hitters for that. Rumex and sanguinaria, spongia, all the things that we would expect to see in there. And then changes to the vocal cords and the voice are also in here. Hoarseness of the voice, loss of voice, where the voice gets deep, where the voice sounds nasal. Now, this seems to me like a strange place to put it. When people have really bad sinuses and it's all blocked up, you would think that you would find that in sinuses, but you don't. You find it in here where the vocal cords are. So under voice, nasal. Voice weakness, you know, for remedies where we would expect to see things like stannum. And then whistling in the larynx and trachea. This is where there's a whistle when somebody's breathing in and out. Okay? You know, most people don't use these sections very much. The larynx and trachea section, they just never go in there and read that section, so they don't really know what's in there. And so they use smaller, less well-matched rubrics from other sections. And that's why it's really important to know what's in there. The next one is respiration. And in respiration, we're going to find everything about breathing, about the functionality of the lungs. And we can find things about the lungs in the chest section, but respiration is specifically about the functionality. Now, usually, if we look at the arrangement that Kent has, he has a physical area followed by, like we have the eye and vision and the ear and hearing. We have something where we would expect to see chest and respiration. But it's almost as if he's attaching respiration to the upper airway here instead of to the function of the lungs. So he must have seen it in that way. So if you open up to respiration, respiration includes all of the aspects of the function, but absolutely no physical pulmonary rubrics. So you're not going to, it's only functional. It's not anything here about lungs. And if you look under respiration difficult, which goes on for pages and pages and pages, there is an unbelievable amount of detail. Respiration difficult, drinking when. Can you open up and find that rubric? This rubric contains several remedies in here that are great for people with a deviated septum because they cannot breathe through their nose when they're drinking. So we have to be a little bit creative about the way that we see these things. You know, they might not otherwise be overly apparent to us. Okay, so that's the respiration section, and most of the time we're going to be looking in here when somebody's having trouble breathing in some way. One thing that I want to point out is at the beginning of the respiration section, there's respiration asthmatic, and there are some very big rubrics in there, followed by an awful lot of sub-rubrics. Hay fever in the repertory, in Kent's repertory, is known as hay asthma. So if you open up to, in my book, it's on page 765, you can see under asthmatic, hay asthma. And we've got, you know, arsenica myodatum and dulcamara and euphrasia and sabadia and Sinapis nigra and Sticta pulmonaria, all the remedies that if you were to look at some formula on the shelf in Whole Foods for a combination remedy for hay fever, all of them would be in there. So here's where you're going to find your leaders for that. Okay. You can also find toward the back of the respiration section a very complete collection of remedies that are related to snoring and to wheezing. So all this is functional. And then the next section after that, we move into cough. And Kent gives us a very, very clear listing of timings, which is quite useful. When people get coughs that come on with a particular periodicity, this is where you're going to be finding it. And these are, I have found these to be really, really clinically accurate. So you want to be sure to be asking people what time of day is the coughing coming on. And a very good differentiation when people have an icky cough is just to start with, do you have it both day and night? Does it wake you up at night? And sometimes people are like, yep, I lay down in bed and it's all night, but I never have it during the day, or vice versa. So he's got very good individuations in here. So Again, in cough, we can find tickling coughs that happen in the pit of the throat, just like we can in larynx and trachea. And they have slightly different rubric or remedies in them. And these are the kinds of circumstances where I wish I could dig Kent up and say, let's have tea. Tell me why these were different. What were you thinking here? Why would you not have the same remedies in both of them? And, those are things that we won't know. And then we get into the section on expectoration. And, like the sections for rectum and stool and phlegm in general is something that people are hesitant to discuss. So when somebody tells you, oh, I'm coughing up all this gunk, the first couple times you ask somebody, what does it look like? You'll get these looks on their face like, you've got to be kidding me. I am so not talking to you about that. But we have to get familiar. This is another one of those areas where we want to normalize our response to it so that we're not uncomfortable when people are talking to us about it. Okay? So Kent covers taste and texture, appearance, frothy, all kinds of gunky things. And then finally, we get into the chest section. And here in the chest is where we're getting the physiological structure. So everything in the upper torso, everything from the diaphragm to the base of the neck is going to be in chest. So if you're looking for armpits, it's going to be in chest using the medical term axilla, A-X-I-L-L-A. If you're looking for the breasts, it's going to be in chest using the medical term mammary, M-A-M-M-A-E. And so everything that has to do with the ribs, the lungs, the breast, the heart, and the functioning of those things we're going to find up here. But the organs that are below the diaphragm, the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, none of those are going to be in the chest section. Even though people might say, oh, I have pain in my chest that's related to one of those other organs. All those other organs are in the abdomen section. Okay? So open up, we've got just a couple minutes left. Open up in your chest section. I want you to find the symptom of a girl at puberty who is lactating, who has milk in the breasts. What do you see in there? You able to pull that up? Chest milk, non-pregnant women. Okay, close. Chest milk at puberty. There you go. And these gals are going through, yeah, so close. And, if you look at these, a lot of these have similar remedies in them. Yeah. Okay. Is there any question that you guys have about this? So now we've gone through all the way from mind down through chest, and now next we're going to get into the structure of the body and then some of the generals. After we get through extremities, everything else is something that affects the entire body: sleep, chill, fever, skin, perspiration, generalities. Okay? So, as you're looking at rubrics this week, I want you to notice the overlaps. When we first start out using the repertory, we expect to find something in one section, the section we think of as where it should be. And as we get more experienced, the more likely we are to look in multiple sections for that thing to try to find a variety of rubrics or a best choice rubric. So I want you to make it your mission in the next week, every time you look for a rubric, to be asking yourself, what other section might this be in? And I want to encourage you to be reading the repertory 5 minutes a day. You know, with each of those 5-minute chunks, you are investing in yourself and in every person that you may be able to help with a remedy. Little bits, a small amount, a small amount, a small amount, that's going to help you overall. Okay? And Marjorie, thank you so much for your emails and all the help keeping me on track. I'm doing an update today with a bunch of the things that you sent me information about, including your address. You're moving, my goodness. Okay, guys, questions? Okay. You guys take care, and I will see you next time when we're talking about structural stuff with back and extremities. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.